I get those in the 25 days of Christmas. And I
Yeah,
get like
right,
a 1
an
ounce.
advent calendar. Yeah,
An
yeah.
advent calendar, that's what it's called.
Pop it open and
there's a whiskey in there. And so the last one I got was Japanese whiskeys.
Okay.
Nice.
Which I guess I would like, that's one of the line of questioning is, I can taste a difference, you just have to give me the adjectives of what that difference is. In a whiskey 101, not a graduate
Whiskey
level
for
course.
dummies.
There's a lot there.
Okay.
Man. A lot to unpack with that.
I don't want to dork out.
Okay.
No, that's all right. I mean, we like dorking out on stuff, so yeah.
Well, I mean, it can go deep, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ones, Japanese styles, rye, bourbon. I mean, it's fucking.
Scotch, Irish, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sure.
It will go on forever.
Yeah.
Well, you've heard it.
Randy, shut the fuck up. Yeah, because right? It's heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, we're going.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
let me give an introduction.
Oh, this is happening?
This is happening. This is it.
Yeah, it's been happening. So,
Let's sneak him in.
Yeah. Well, I have to say objectively, this is a good-looking podcast.
Thanks,
Really?
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, awesome.
I mean, you should have saw who we had on here
I'm
yesterday.
losing my hair like a motherfucker, but yeah.
We had a guy on here yesterday. He was so ugly. He went into a haunted house and came up with a job application. That's a true story.
Have you guys met Jeremy
yeah,
Proctor?
have you guys met Jeremy before?
All right. Well, this is a great-looking podcast. This is the Mama Tried Flat Out Friday podcast. I think this might be 59, 60, 60, the 60th issue. Pew, pew, pew.
Thanks for having us, guys. We really appreciate it, man.
We have some very special guests for our 60th podcast.
And we're on location
This is not our normal studio. We're in Studio B,
for those watching at home.
Fuel Cafe. And this
We're Studio A.
Studio A was Warren's shop.
Bomb shelter.
We
Oh,
actually,
okay.
we have like a podcast studio there. We usually do most of the tapings, but I'm trying to branch out a little bit. Get out of the cave.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
just
no,
we
this
did
is
our
cozy.
first.
This is
Yeah.
good. The Phil
Yeah.
Cafe is our first time, obviously, but beautiful. Love it. I mean, very, very cool place.
Thanks.
I have a connection with this place, Scott. Of course, I have a connection with you. But we used to, all of the Mama Tried and Flat Out Fridays were planned. We used to have 3-hour marathon weekly meetings year-round.
3 hours is an abbreviated.
Year,
That's us.
every weekend, every week we'd be
every
here.
week we'd meet here.
Yeah.
And hang out and plan the show. I miss that.
Yeah, and now we don't meet at all. That's really pretty funny. This is a true story. We met every week for 3 hours now.
We're really good at like going deep into something and then just like.
Yeah, that we're done.
Was it the
We just realized we don't like that. Let's do something different.
Pivot
Was it
after
the
a whole
pan-
month of
was it
planning.
because of the pandemic? Was it that when we stopped doing it? Because I feel like every week all kind of shifted to Zoom.
I don't
after
know,
that.
man. It was like,
Something like
we're
that.
not getting it. We're not getting. I think we got to the point where like we don't get anything done. We got a little frustrated because there's so many people and so
Right.
many like
It became a
it was
social
thing.
situation.
Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah.
We should still do that with the team because it helps
Yeah.
camaraderie
It
and
does.
you know.
Hanging out
And we
together.
realized that we were losing time with us three, which is an important thing in our lives too.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing. Do you have something you want to say?
Well, I was gonna say let's reel it
Yeah,
back.
let's
talk
reel it
about
back. We have
let's talk
guests.
about
Our
guests.
60th
Role reversal.
This is a 60th episode. We have some guests, and first time at Fuel. So where are you guys from? What's your names?
My name is Josh Allison. We're from the shop is in Danbury, Connecticut.
I'm Randy Carlson. It's American Metal Customs, and American Metal Whiskey.
I guess I should have said that.
What's Danbury like? I've never been.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah, where's Danbury?
So it's Connecticut, and this is new for me.
I've been there 20 years,
Yeah.
in a town just south called Ridgefield, but it's about 45 minutes out of New York City,
North, south, east, west.
north, and
Okay.
a little bit east.
Okay.
Yeah, so you fly into LaGuardia, and it's an hour to drive, to Danbury where the shop is. Got a beautiful new building up there and a storage building back behind it, 267 vehicle storage behind. It's all state-of-the-art stuff. It's top shelf, and I'm getting ahead of it a little bit. So I'll let
From what
Josh
I've seen
talk
on
to
the
that,
interwebs, it's beautiful.
Dude,
Yeah.
you got to come, man.
It's a world-class shop. It's a
destination.
destination, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
that was
easy to
the
get
whole
to,
plan.
and Danbury's not really a tourist trap. It's not like a lot of people are saying, "Hey, let's go to Danbury, Connecticut."
Yeah.
It's a working, commuting kind of a community. We've got a
The Hat
couple
City, right?
It's the Hat City, yeah. So
They
back in the
used
day,
to make hats
yeah.
back
Love
in the
it.
day.
Really?
Yeah. So you've heard the expression "Mad as a Hatter," right? They used to
Yeah.
use mercury to do all
Yeah.
that shit. Well, that's a lot of ancient Danbury history.
Oh,
Goes
right.
back to the Mercury kind of thing.
There's
but
still a
it's-
bunch of hat stuff around.
No.
No,
They're all-
but
they're
the
all
buildings though, and
Yeah.
that whole throwback. I mean, everything there. It's old, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
a lot of the houses, 1800s and stuff
Yeah.
like
1700s,
that. 1700s. Yeah.
We got my town, Ridgefield, was on the battle trail for the Revolutionary War.
Sure.
And there were buildings that are still there. There's one with a cannonball still on the wall from a
Dope.
battle that came. So there's a lot of that kind of history.
We're by
Those
Rams
gates.
Pastor, and that's another iconic spot too. 1702. So definitely a lot of history.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's that East Coast history.
East Coast
Yeah, it is.
history. Yeah.
Stone walls
Well,
everywhere. and all
you
that
guys
stuff.
are New England.
Yeah.
Is that
That's
fair?
right. It's the first part of New England, really.
Yeah.
Because once you leave New York, you're in New England, and you don't really know what happens until you're driving the road, you see it. You're out riding around, and these stone walls just start popping up, and they're fucking everywhere. It's
Yeah.
just, and the roads don't go straight. They do all this kind of
It's
stuff.
all horse trails,
Yeah.
and it's wild. And I've only been there 3 years. I'm from the Midwest, born in Wyoming. In Colorado, long history there. But yeah, I mean, I was complaining. The rides and stuff too. A lot of times you're like, I don't know what's going on. Why are we doing this shit? Stop signs and all this weird crap, and they're literally horse trails. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense because there is no rhyme or reason to a neighborhood.
Yeah, like
Right,
when
okay.
I was growing up riding in the Midwest, I called it left right, because like
That's all it
it didn't
is.
matter where you went. If
Dude,
you
it's
went
a
left,
grid.
you just go right
It's
again.
a grid, right?
Yeah.
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 It's like, it's so, yeah, you're there.
Yeah.
Dude, in Connecticut, you're like, I don't know how to get you there, dude. You got to follow us or get on your phone. Without
Yeah.
my phone, I don't know even how I'd get to work, dude. Yeah, it's brutal. And when you're riding, you're just like, you just end up lost, which can be really cool
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
tell you what, Colorado is beautiful, but Connecticut is the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
All right, bold statement.
The trees, the forest, when the leaves turn.
Seasons,
I mean,
yeah.
it's truly a truly beautiful place.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then how do you guys know each other?
So, if a little background on American Metal Whiskey and American Metal Customs. So, I've been building bikes and cars for a really long time, and came up in Wyoming. Always had a passion for it. Being around it. Starting off in dirt bikes and all that, and then I ended up going to college because I was going to be an artist. Right, that was my life plan, and got into college, and right away dropped out and realized that was not my path. That was not my jam. So I ended up going down to Fort Collins where my mom lived at that time and just really fell in love with it. Loved Colorado, loved just the whole state, but definitely northern Colorado. So I started, digging in there and kind of wanted to do the tattoo thing for a while. That didn't really work out. And I was like, well, how do I transfer my art into things? And so I started a paint company. And I started airbrushing motocross helmets and just different things. And that leaked into a full-time custom company that ended up being Linen and Styles Custom Paint, painting bikes and painting cars. But at that point, it was like, all right, I want to really get serious with this. I really want to start creating on, bikes, like what I see, tanks and all that stuff. So I went to Wyotech. So back to Wyoming. So I did a year driving back and forth, graduated from Wyotech, and then got into a company called Tin Element. And it really just changed my perspective on everything. Super high-end metal shaping, super high-end what I call coach building. They're rebodying vintage Porsches off a picture. Neil
Yeah.
was like insanely talented. Still probably the most talented metal shaper I've ever been around. So it really opened me up to all these possibilities, but I definitely wanted to go down the side of more bikes, choppers, and hot rods. So ended up working in all these shops, and then at one point started my own company. And Linen, that was Crybaby Cycles, and that was in Greeley, Colorado. So did that for a while, and then Orange County Choppers called me up, and Paul was like, hey, dude, just fly out, make me a tank. I was like, all right. And it was a little bit tough for me because it wasn't on brand for me or kind of the bikes I built and that whole thing. And so ended up going out there. Super nice guy, built a tank, and then he's like, oh, you got to come back and do a season. So I'm like, all right. Came back, did a season, then ended up doing a contract. After that contract ran out, I was building a bike there for finishing up my contract. COVID hit, and building a bike for Chris. It was the Captain America bike off Easy Rider, right? And so Chris was coming in and talking to me, and hey, what are you going to do next? What's your plans and all that? And I said, I don't know, they're moving to Florida. Didn't really want to do that. Maybe we'll go back to Colorado. And he said, listen, man, I have North American Motor Car going on, and I would really like to do something more in the custom shop and, dig into this. I love your work. Me and him really hit it off. And he goes, let's do something. And I think it could be called American Metal. I said, dude, that's kind of resonating with me, man. That sounds pretty good. So me and my wife were like, well, do we go back to Colorado, start the shop again, or, do we go to Connecticut? So decided to go to Connecticut with Chris, started American Metal Customs. And when we kicked that brand off, me and Chris, as we got closer, we're like, oh, we loved whiskey. And so when we were building that, he was always like, dude, we gotta start a whiskey company too, man. And I know a guy that I met through Cub Scouts named Randy Carlson, and I think this guy could, get us there. He works for Diageo and all that, and I'm like, oh my God, dude, this is amazing. The branding transferred over. We had Brian Stephen with us at that point. We had the creation of it. We were going, and I was building the Disciple at that time.
Yep.
And so we kicked off the whiskey company, brought Randy in, and then from there it's kind of history, So we kicked it off at Fuel Cleveland. We brought the Disciple there, and that was the first time where we're just like,
Dude, we just had a barrel that I sourced.
a barrel that he sourced.
Just
and
to think,
check.
do we have the right taste profile with this thing or not?
Let's
we're just
test it out.
We're pouring
Yeah.
samples out of the spigot, right? And it was like everybody at Fuel Cleveland was
But
going
it
nuts.
went over like
huge.
we did not
Yeah.
expect it.
Yeah.
And we were just completely winging it. They were super cool, and Mike and stuff. They're like, yeah, just kind of do your thing, And so, yeah, we brought the Disciple, rented a bunch of furniture, and kind of made like a hangout, right?
That was cool.
And just said, all right, we're just going to start pouring. And over 1,000 shots?
1,500,
Yeah.
1,600 shots.
I did probably like, 500 of them. Yeah. That was another thing I didn't realize is, I'm going to do shots with everybody
pace,
because
man.
it's really fun. And it was like, we went hard. But it was like, holy shit, I think we have something here that's very, very cool. And for 2 years, we kind of poured it organically.
Yeah, so
Took
it was,
it around with the shop, and that's the connected
kind of doing the
material
field
that gives it
research,
the
right?
story,
That's where
right?
it started out. Was kind of, it wasn't quite casual, but Chris called me up and said, "Hey, man, we got this thing that we're doing. The building's not done yet. We're going to put a lounge in there. We want some whiskey to go with it. We think it's a bigger thing than that." And I'm like, I think so too. Let's go figure this out and get it right. So we had 30 different distilleries. I had 30 different distilleries send me samples of various things that they had already barreled, just to get an idea of what's right for us, what's right for American Metal.
Yeah,
what's on
what you
brand.
guys can agree on, kind of.
Yeah,
like,
right,
does your
exactly.
palate-
Because there's a taste, right?
Yeah, you want to get
And-
behind it, right? You want to believe
Well,
in
we
it
have
and
to,
like
because
it.
if we're not behind it,
Yeah.
then it's dog shit, right?
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Yeah, you can
and
see
the
right
story
through
is
it.
very important too. It's a real shop. It's connected to real people, real builds, and it's authentic. And
Right.
that was really important from us for the get-go. That was a connected material. Otherwise, it's just another brown juice, right?
Yeah.
And I've been doing this a long time, and there's never one juice that people can say, yeah, that's what we want. 4 people agreeing for that,
Yeah.
we agree.
It was pretty wild,
like-
right? Yeah.
That's cool.
All right, so we narrowed that down to 8 pretty quickly because there were 22 of them that just didn't fit the bill. And of those 8 items, send additional samples back into us so we could get an idea of what their next batch is like and what their different mash bills are like and things like that. And 4 of them kind of filtered out from that. So we have 4 suppliers that we go to for the whiskey, and we're pulling up individual barrels, right? So this is actually a single barrel that's in that bottle right now. We don't advertise it that way because we'll mix up to 4 barrels because sometimes they come in a little bit off, or we got to balance them out, or we have to supplement with a little bit of rye to get that right taste. So we want to have the latitude to do that. I'm way ahead.
Now
aren't I?
you're getting,
All right.
now you're getting
Sorry,
into
David.
Proc's world.
It goes fast.
I want to get into that. I really do. But you've already said so much. So let's pause whiskey for a second. Let's focus on custom if we can. So you said a lot, Josh, about your life, and you summed it up really well. But I want to go back to the reality show. That's something I think most people are curious about. Were you a rock star there for a brief period of time?
So it's a really if I look back on it, and even in the time I was doing it, something I didn't really ever think I would do, and I've done some other TV shows in California, little hits in that, but it wasn't like my life plan or my goal. It was a really weird thing. Paul reached out to me on Instagram, and I just thought it was fake. It just blew it off, didn't even answer. And then one day, me and my wife are upstairs, we're having coffee and chilling out, and I get this call, and yo, bro. And I'm like, hello? Hey! Your fucking tanks are sick! And I'm like, oh, this is Paul. Right away that it's like, oh, it's Paul. My wife's like, we're like, put him on speakerphone, and he's like, hey, man, I really love your work. And the reason why I did that primarily is, because I really like him as a human. And I really feel like that show, I don't know if it gave him a fair swing of who he is in real life, because it was such a thick dynamic with him and Junior. And Joan is one of the most beautiful people I've ever met. His wife is a complete sweetheart. And so it was wild. And, and like I said, it just started on, I just want to come do this tank. This would be fun and get out of there. But I did it because we connected, and the whole goal there, and I think this is an important story too, and not a lot of people ask about it because you just see the TV show and you have your own perspective of it, is it was about making rideable motorcycles that were handcrafted and getting away from the bullshit, you know, and putting all these tchotchkes on these bikes and these brands. And I said, you know, we can build a bike for a brand, but we can build it cool and brand it cool and make it rideable. And all those bikes, you know, on the seasons I did, I'm very proud of that. And I know Paul was too, that they were cool, they were handcrafted, they were definitely branded, but like they were rippers, man. They were awesome bikes. The Salem hot dog bike, and when you say that, people are like, what? You know, Salem hot dogs are awesome, but it was like, how do you build a freaking killer bike for a hot dog company, right? And we built a kick-ass shovel head, man, all handcrafted parts, patinaed out. I mean, that bike, I wanted to keep that bike. Paul was like, fuck, if we could keep one, it would be that. I mean, we were really proud of it, and yet represented that company. And that was the whole goal. Mm-hmm. But that's a hard thing to achieve because you're trying to read into a company and make a motorcycle. So it got me. That was the hook that got me there. And we had a great time. We traveled a lot.
I always wondered about it, you know, those shows, they're basically marketing plays for whoever you're building bikes for.
That's why they do it.
Yeah,
that's why they do it.
I got that, but it's like to put guys like you and even Paul in positions like that is like the lines. Where does it start to get blurry and fucking stupid?
Well, I got a lot of. I mean, if we got to be real, I got a lot of hate for it.
Yeah,
people
of course.
didn't understand why it did it, and people didn't, you know, oh, we're just doing this for TV, you're selling out, and it was like, no, you know, and that was what was hard is the show doesn't talk about that, right?
Well, you can't. They have their own agenda, right?
Oh,
like,
dude, hard, and they just want to do ABC that they've always done because that was one of the biggest reality shows that the world has ever seen, you know, and so it was really tough to get in there.
When you say they had an agenda, who you talking
Discovery.
about?
Discovery.
Yes, right. Okay.
Yeah. And you know, we worked with Pilgrim in these different places, and so you're dealing with producers and stuff. And for us, it was just like, we're going to build bikes, we're going to set culture, we're going to show handcraft because that's what we do. And they're like, no, we need to do some dumb shit.
Sure.
And it was like, you know, and it was like, you know, I mean, there was times of like severe, you know, friction.
But I gave you an open slate to tell me about the time on reality TV, and you had a chance to talk shit about it. You had a chance to say it was not real. But listening to the passion in which you talk about it, you tell me it was real as real.
It was no bullshit. Mm-hmm. We had usually
because
anywhere from 40.
As a consumer, I assume all of it's bullshit. But
well, that's what I'm saying, and that's the tough part about doing TV. And you have to go into TV knowing, one, you're going to have a camera in your face all the time, okay? So you got to be able to blur that out to actually work. You have to be real with yourself and not be fake on TV, which a lot of people are. And then also, you're literally building something in front of the world that's real. So if it goes sideways, man, it's going sideways. And, you know, like when I called Ryan from Paper Street Customs in because I needed a partner in crime to help me out to get these bikes done. And me and him had a good dynamic. We worked well together. He's he knows his shit. And so that was important too, because if you're not tight with that team and it gets off, you're not making the deadlines. And another thing is like, oh, all the deadlines are fake. Those deadlines were beyond real, like super stressful. And I was flying back and forth on that first season, away from my family, away from my kid, you know, for months at a time sometimes, getting these bikes done. You have to get the bike done, then you have to haul ass, go to this unveiling, unveil the bike, get your ass back and do another one, because on that contract with Discovery, we have to build 12 bikes for that season, 12 episodes.
Yeah, I was going to say.
What happens if you don't make it? There is literally not a choice.
Wow.
So the pressure is immense and real, and Paul understood that more than ever. But the cool thing about him is we never fought. He was super calm, wasn't screaming and yelling like everybody said. And the guy really, truly loves motorcycles.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, anybody can say what they want about him, but they don't know him, man. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was a really cool experience.
I appreciate to see your loyalty to this and to him.
And he, you know, still to this day down in Florida, he's still doing bikes, still doing his thing. You know, we did part ways, but it wasn't on, you know, oh, I hate you and all that stuff. It wasn't like that.
Sure.
It was, you know, it was time to just do our own things.
How long did you do with him?
So it ended up being, it was a 2-year contract plus that back and forth season, so a little over 3 years. Yeah, so it was a long time, and it was heavy, man. We'd go stay with him. We were close. He loved my little boy, loved my wife, like, it was hard breaking up. But I really wanted, for me, it made me realize how much I miss the industry, I miss the culture, and I'm rooted in handcrafted freaking motorcycles. That's just who I am. So it was time for me to go.
There's a lot, and if we had a 4-hour podcast, I'd like to get into many things. But just one thing that you said, and I want to zoom in a little more. You said you have to be real when doing television, right? You said this.
We got to be real in life, right?
Well, when you say gotta, what does gotta mean? That's my question. What do you mean you gotta be real? You mean
what else do you have if you're being fake and you're this facade and you're selling shit, especially whiskey and a brand to
because
the public,
you said many
people are going to read through that, especially boys like this. So if you're not real, and especially on TV, it just to me it just shines through.
Sure.
I mean, how many TV shows do you watch where you're like, no, that's bullshit.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's not what I wanted for me. And that's and Paul, never bullshit. You want to know some guy that just like Paul's doing Paul, and I always love that too. I'm leaving. Like, no, you can't leave. I'm walking, going, and he's going, dude. Like, and I was always like, okay, it's no BS, and so I always appreciated that. And I think our team, that's one of the biggest things we try to represent, especially when we started this, of we were selling a lifestyle, we were selling a custom culture, we were selling not only ourselves but what we do, real bikes, real cars, real craft, real whiskey from real dudes.
And for America, for middle America, that help me out with the vocabulary here, Scott. That's what people are romanticizing. That's why people love Lemmy from Motorhead. It represents, I'm stuck in this office cubicle,
No bullshit.
accounting spreadsheets, but this guy over here is custom making motorcycles.
Live vicariously through
Yes,
folks.
right?
Yeah. With people who have an authenticity and,
And that was the popularity of you in the show.
I don't know if I was ever popular on it or any of that. I just know that we, no matter what the public thing was, we felt like we did the best we could.
Right.
But with those bikes and on that show and Total Line.
Got it. Okay, you have a question on
I
that?
had a quick question. I don't really know. I know about the show. I never watched it. I'm just not like
It's
a TV
okay.
person.
It's okay, Scott.
Yeah,
It's okay.
no, it's just not. But
You're
like,
in a
what's
safe space.
what?
We better open up that whiskey quick.
Yeah, seriously. No, but like, what's it like being like wherever you go, people recognize you from that show? Is it suck? Is it great?
So what ends up happening with that, and that was kind of a learning curve too, is when you're in the thick shooting and seasons are coming out, and especially overseas, I mean, it's wildly popular, right? But when you're with Paul and some of the things we did, you would get recognized, especially like when we fly and go to airports. Dude, the whole plane at one point is just like, taking pictures. Girls like, oh my God, I watched this with my dad growing up. His hair, and it was great. And you go to airports, and we would have that. In Vegas, we did like a 3-hour signing, dude, in the line. I mean, just as long as it goes. And there was times for me that was a connection, and people would recognize me, but that slowly leaves. Paul will always have that. He's a true celebrity. He's spent the better part of his life on TV being famous. For me, it was just, as a touch and go. And so I don't get it very much. And when I do, it's like, awesome, man. I appreciate that. Hey, especially when they're like,
cool.
Dude, that was a killer bike, man. I really love that bike. To me, that's what resonates with me, that they appreciate my craft. Because at the end of the day, dude, I'm a nothing. I'm a fabricator, dude. I just like building bikes and drinking whiskey with this guy. And so it's one of those things where I'm not complicated. So when people come up and say I love the bike, that's what does it for me, man.
I appreciate your genuineness, because you could have easily, I didn't know you before we did this. You could have easily talked shit about Hollywood, all the players in it, but I appreciate you being loyal, because it was real.
TV is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It can be a lot of fun. But it's like anything, right? It is what you make of it, dude. You can do shit, or you can do great, or you can have a good attitude, or you can have a bad attitude.
Sure. Well, I appreciate your attitude. Your positive attitude. Your PMA, we call it.
Well, I feel very lucky for the opportunities I've had.
Well,
and that all comes from everybody that touches you along that path, right?
Tell me, what are you doing now? Are you customizing now?
Yes. So the shop is a full turnkey, very custom shop. We specialize in restorations. We specialize in customs, custom paint,
and this
custom
is
interior.
cars
and bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and primarily we're car heavy. And I've spent a lot of my life, which people don't know, building cars. And so bikes to me was always a passion. It started off as a side hustle, then turned into, my full-time thing. But so yeah, right now I'm about ready to build a bike this year with Harley. So I'm very excited about that, which is a very unique and different opportunity for me. Just finished up Zion last year for Born Free 14. I was invited builder, which I've had a good history with those guys. And right now I'm also working on a 34 project. Yeah.
What does that mean?
A 1934 5-window. I'm a huge hot rod guy, dude.
Car. I got my brain can't switch gears from a panhead to
I'm
a
all
34
over, dude.
car.
I'm like, build a bike with Harley, building a custom bike, building the car. But I like that diversity. I get bored, and I like to create.
So Josh is being typically humble with this, right? So this isn't like somebody brought in their 34 and we're giving it a paint job. This is like a build from frame all the way up, everything. He's working the metal now. There's some Instagram stuff.
It's a ground up
it's
frame
like
hard job.
Every single piece is custom made, hand fabricated.
Yeah, when you bought them heads for me, and I was watching you build that bike, I think I'd text you, I'm like, dude, you sleep? How do you, like, are you on drugs?
I get a lot of that from people because I don't. Well, it's funny because, and ask my wife, like, I might have insomnia. Honestly, I don't sleep well, and I'm always in my head, and I'm always thinking. And honestly, there's quite a bit of pressure at the shop, and there's a lot of different projects, especially when you're building bikes for shows. You don't want to show up, not giving your all, right? And so a lot of my life is that pressure, which I love. I thrive in that. My creative brain works that way. But I don't know, man. I just go.
Yeah.
So every day
it shows, man. And like the technical stuff that you're doing on bikes and cars is wild. And I'm not that guy, right? Like I can't go that deep. I'm like, I'll just touch the surface of what you guys are doing. It's pretty cool to watch.
I mean, for me, I've been doing it a long time, but we also, as a whole in the shop, we have a lot of loaded guns and a lot of experience. You know, Ralph's been building cars for longer, than I've been alive, dude. So it's cool to be around those people too, because if you get into the weeds, you're like, and you figure shit out, especially when you're pushing the limits,
Right.
Are those guys able to share with you? Like, are they open and forthright? Because a lot of the old timers, like, you go one way or the other.
We're completely the opposite.
Yeah,
completely the opposite. But you got to remember, we're a team, right?
Yeah.
And all the cars we're building, like for clients, you better know that, Mark, right?
Yeah.
You're paying a bunch of money, and there's expectations, so that it's super team, dude.
Yeah.
Super team.
That's great.
The bikes and some of that, I'm kind of that dude on that, like Zidon and all that. That's kind of my independent projects, like the 34. But there's always still, if you get into the weeds, hey, let's talk about this. What do you think? Or hey, I don't know what's going on here. And we have once again a beautiful team that we all benefit from it, right?
Yeah.
We're all a family.
Well, what's a bread and butter project that someone would bring, a customer would bring to the shop? Like,
so right now, and it's funny when you look at East Coast, Midwest, and you look at Cali, right? West Coast. West Coast is so hard on the culture of like hot rods, choppers, and they push a lot of that stuff. Lead sleds, customs, push got nice weather. Texas, same thing. Colorado and stuff like that, a little bit different, but it's still pretty heavy, in that culture of hot rods and customs and bikes. But the East Coast has been very, very different. You had places like Orange County Choppers back in the day. You had Indy and Larry. Orange County Choppers just kind of moved on and, still going, but in a different level. And, once Indy and Larry died, that was the dude, man. That was the East Coast in my mind, legend. You still have Paul Cox, which unbelievable dude, unbelievable builder. But the bike culture out there is a little bit different. And where we are, there is no bike culture. Like, I'm the only chopper dude right now. I'll pull up in a knuckle and be like, what is that? It's just not there, which is super strange to me. The hot rod world is like, I'm like, we're going to chop 8 inches out of this, slam it, flatheads, all this stuff. And they're like, no, man, we keep them high and all. And I'm like, whoa, you got this all fucked up. It's very different. So a lot of the cars, to answer your question, is, we have some hot rod projects going on. Most of the bikes I build are, primarily for shows, but we have a lot of resto mods, so we get a lot of muscle cars. It's very heavy in the muscle cars, and it's very heavy in the restoration. in that world. You know, you have a lot of amazing swap meets and a lot of bougie stuff. You know, you got the Greenwich Concourse and stuff like that. So we have like we have a 66 Nova, once again resto mod. You know, all this is LS superchargers. We have a 54 Cadillac Roadster shop chassis, supercharged LS. We have a 64 Sport Fury. It's got a Hellcat in it, and dude, we got all this RAS suspension under it, Hellcat motor, but that car looks completely stock. But dude, this guy will blow the doors out of anybody. So it's kind of that muscle car heavy, you know, culture there, which is great, you know. But it's definitely where I came from. It was like hot rods and bikes, man, and a whole different style of it.
You asked what projects like pay the rent, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is
That's
your bread and
it.
butter? Yeah.
So there's some restorations too, like you know the GTO
Keating
genre, that kind of
project.
shit. It's like
Yeah.
they want the numbers matched and rebuilt the way it was. There's a
Right.
little bit of that too, like the Camaro that's in there with the custom interior. That's
Yeah, no, you're
pretty
right.
badass little.
So I'm gonna
setup.
scratch
But very
this-
muscle car heavy.
I'm gonna scratch this off my notes here because I have a 2016 Toyota Yaris, and I needed a new.
Yeah, we're not working
windshield
on
wiper
that.
motor. You know, it's not gonna get fixed there.
No, you gotta
AutoZone,
take that
man.
shit somewhere
AutoZone.
else, dude. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
All right, I'll cross that off. But when you mentioned a 34, so
Yeah.
I know the least about motorcycle custom culture, but I just want to ask you this question: you call a car a 34, yet everything is custom. So then why is it even a 34? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay, so let's get into
What's the
that.
parameters?
No, that's a
but
really
say
good
it. But
question.
give me a layman's terms. Don't drop a lot of vocabulary on me.
Okay.
Just
Well,
keep it tight.
Okay, are you ready? So if you look at a bike, and I'm building a knuckle, right? Say it's a 46 knuckle.
Mm-hmm.
I built everything around it, but dude, it's a 46 knuckle.
Because the motor's
Because of the
exposed,
motor.
and
Well,
that's
but
the
it-
relation to reality.
But it's a 46 knuckle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So primarily that's how guys in the industry relate to it and whatnot. Now on the car side, it's a 34 because it's a 1934 Ford. And so I always just say, oh, it's a 34. Now you got a coupe, you got a 5-window, you got a roadster, or whatever. And so if it was like a 32 roadster, some people call them a deuce, but it's a 32 roadster because the year matters. And it's a Ford. You know, you're not saying, well, I'm building the Ford because that be, you know, could be your car that we're not going to
Sure.
take in. But this is a 34 5-window. And so it's got five windows.
But the frame is made by you. I mean, you didn't. The frame didn't. You're not refabbing a frame. The frame you made.
So how's that? Okay, so we take the stock frame rails, and what's important about that is they're stamped by Henry Ford, right?
Okay.
That's very important because that puts value, right? All this is based off value, like a knuckle. That's why it's a Harley knuckle. It's real. It's got numbers. Without those numbers, doesn't mean shit.
all right.
So I take the frame rails. They're not boxed. I clean them up. I fill all the holes in. I box the frame rails, and then on this one, I'm using a Pete and Jake center section with really cool dropped axle chrome. It's got holes in it, split bones. It's got a quick changer in.
Yeah, I'm running out. I'm running out of ink here.
But that's not where all that started. But at the end of the day, sorry, I'm like,
That's awesome.
what's going on is at the end of the day, it's a 34 Ford.
No, I get it. I
And
get
30
it.
Does that
like
make-
Ford,
and it's the
Ford
body.
is it's so heavy Ford in the hot rod world, right? Like a majority
Iconic.
of what folks built and customized in the back of the day is Ford because there were so many of them and they're so cool. And
Yeah.
you know,
The most iconic is always going to be the 32, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a 5-window, and the Roadster is the most iconic. And 32, which really made it, is a 1-year only where the frame rail has a reveal in it. It's got a push in. And the 34, 36s, and then you kind of skip to a 40. You know, there was those really iconic ones, 29 Roadsters and all that. It's just super cool hot rodding. But like you said, back then they were prevalent. There were a lot of them.
cheap.
They're cheap. And now they become like, go find a 32 Roadster that's real.
Yeah.
Good luck.
They're
Good
top
luck.
of the line, right? Like they're fast, and
Yeah.
there's so many parts around, and
Yeah.
that's why it's easy. That's why you break them down by years because it's
Yeah.
like
No, I get it. I
And
get
people
it.
get that. And like with the, I'm doing a flathead. So H&H, they're the flathead kings. They built a supercharged flathead. It's really cool. And that's what that car originally came with. So you're trying to get that nostalgia plus that custom. But that body at the end of the day, no matter how hard I chop it, it's still a 34
Sure.
Ford.
No, I get it.
Side
I
doors, yeah.
appreciate you bringing it back to the numbers. That's
Yeah.
an important reference for
Yeah.
me. I want you to know real quick. My partner's here too. That growing up, my father was always building a 65 Chevy Impala.
Okay.
Do you know
yeah,
this?
we got to ride in it.
You got to ride it.
I want a 6.4 so bad.
But my connection to that is my dad drug it out of the ground, literally, and restored it my entire life living at home. I was always scrubbing some part of the frame or
Yeah.
didn't know why or what, but we customized this. We didn't customize. We brought back to life.
Yeah.
And we tried to make it as, period correct.
Yeah.
As possible.
Yeah.
Anyway, so listening to you talk about cars just jarred that part of my brain. I totally forgot that I had this experience with my father.
Yeah, you already had it. You just said it. Yeah.
Now Pancho rolls around in that thing and blasts Shakira from the rooftops.
This is a true story. We went to see my father. Just real quick. This interview is about you, but I want to share this side story that he was talking about.
You guys.
I tried to organize a motorcycle ride up to my hometown, Calumet, Michigan, where my father has this car still to this day.
In the UP.
And he's so excited.
Really
He's 78 years old. He's never had this many guests at his home, and so he breaks the car out and drives it around the streets. But unbeknownst to me,
Sure.
a huge Shakira fan. Do you know Shakira?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what my
Everybody
listen
does.
to.
Yeah, right.
Scott walked up on it. He's got the best.
we were
part of it.
we were out at the we got up there on a Friday night. We were out. We went bar hopping, and it was like the last bar was like almost bar time, and I was like, and then they were lining up shots. I was like, I'm done. So I started wandering back, and I think I can find the house. And I'm like, I think I can find the house because Calumet's used to be a huge town, small town now. I'm wandering through these neighborhoods and eventually found the house. And his dad, it's like 2 a.m. His dad has this big screen set up. Like the garage is really unique. It's got garage doors on both sides.
Okay.
So on the back side where you would enter, like where the headlights would flash up against, he's got the garage door open and a huge mesh screen, big screen, with a projector on it. He's sitting on the porch. I think he's drinking a beer or something like that, and he's watching Shakira videos with the volume just turned up to 10, like lighting up the entire town. And
Crushing on her all hard and just.
Yeah. I thought I was walking into a house party. I was like, no, this can't be the house. It looks like the house, but like they're playing Shakira videos. It can't be it.
That's hilarious, dude. That's hilarious.
All right. Well, thanks for putting an end cap then on that discussion.
We learned a lot about Proc that
he's
weekend.
learned a lot about
family.
Spent the time with his mom and his aunts at the bar. It's good shit.
That's amazing.
Well, all right. So Randy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We call him Randog, or Rowdy Randy.
Randy from Newberry.
Danbury.
Danbury. What did I say?
Newberry.
Or Ridgefield, it's the same.
Wherever.
You have a history in customizing cars.
No.
No, motorcycles.
Nope.
Whiskey.
You're just whiskey. So
Alcohol.
So now show me that connection directly to you involved with the shop per se. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the connection is really through Chris, right? Chris Bishop. And I've known him for a long time. His sons were in Scouts with my son, and I was one of the Scout leaders, which is kind of a cool,
Sure, it's a community.
Help younger guys, build themselves up into something better than they otherwise would be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a reward in itself. So I got to know Chris, I guess a little over 10 years ago or so. And I was, previous to that, I was at Diageo, running innovation projects. Diageo's a big spirits company.
Okay.
Something like 30% of the spirits. And innovation for me was like making shit up, right? So that's been my job from college was, I call it entrepreneurship. So big companies would pay me to go invent shit that they couldn't do. And we build little businesses out of it.
No way.
Sometimes they'd catch on
That sounds like the
fire
coolest job in the whole
right?
world. Yeah.
Yeah. So
like what's some?
Thing once again, very humble.
Yeah.
Really.
for me, the excitement in that was, I call it the top of the waves, right? So the ocean's deep, and you got to have Smirnoff paying the bills and Johnny Walker paying the bills, but the stuff on the top is what gets the attention, and that's where the excitement is. But those waves don't generally last long, right? So sometimes they catch fire and they turn into Ciroc, which is a vodka that's been pretty successful over the years. And sometimes they don't, like Moon Mountain Vodka, which was this awesome organic vodka, those copper pot distill, and it would, had a great place for it. It was going to go up against Tito's, and Diageo decided not to invest in that one. I'm like, okay. But that's kind of how it goes when you're inside of that company. You don't own the work product, and you're not the one that's investing in the growth of it. So I got out of that because I wanted to have some participation in this. So fast forward a little bit, and I joined this distillery, craft distillery. It's one of the oldest craft distilleries in the country up in Vermont, called Vermont Spirits, and that was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And then Chris called me when these guys got together and said, hey, we're looking at doing a whiskey for the shop. Come on down, talk to us. Maybe you can help us out. I'm like, well, I have the means for production, right? I've got access to the juice and the suppliers. and it's an easy fit. And one of the things that Josh talked a little bit about the team and just being real and authentic and that's not bullshit, right? It's not like there's no corporate stuff in there. Nobody's got facades on. Sometimes we're a little bit raw with each other, which is okay because we hug it out or whatever. But we also have a policy of no assholes, right? So NA, we call it the NA policy. We're not bringing people in. Well, that's just behavior. But we don't bring people into the fold that are not going to be with us long term. We want people that are going to be like yeah. So it's real, it's authentic, and that's just so refreshing. And so that's one of the reasons I jumped in on this thing was he's going to do this, he's going to do it well, he's going to do it right, he's got a great team, he's got a great idea, we got a good starting point. I don't know what the whiskey's going to be yet. I don't know how we're going to go to market with it yet. We got we'll figure that out. But that's the uncomfortable place that I live in. I'm happy living in that shit, right? That's what we do. We kind of say, oh, well, let's go figure it out.
But it's the fun part too, right?
It's the fun part. Yeah, we're creating stuff. This is going to outlive me. But,
yeah, you got to be able to go with the flow and that. Yeah, we got one of those too.
Love you guys.
Well,
here's the old fox.
I told you earlier that I'm itching with questions about whiskey. Can you educate me on a little bit about whiskey and tell me why American Metal is a good whiskey?
Oh my God! All right, so I'm going to try to give you the short version on whiskey.
Yeah, but let's crack it out.
Well, wait. Can we let's back up just one step?
Yes.
One step. I don't want to go way back. I want to go back. You guys were in Milwaukee because you're going to bars.
So let's tie this in. This is an important question.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why you're here.
We're in Milwaukee, first of all, because you guys, right? Because we had a connectivity with you guys. And Mama Tried was an amazing show, an amazing experience. And so after that, with what we did, which is important, it was the custom bike building and the culture, but it was like whiskey fit in there well, too. So it's important when we work with people that they understand both sides to us, right? And that show, the rave, you guys was just like, oh, yeah, this is
totally on brand.
Freaking amazing, dude.
Thank you.
So when we started to get the real whiskey plan together, it was like, well, how do we surround it about, with an activation, right? Because for most, we're builders, we're customizers, we live in this culture. And then what do? We leak it out from there. And Milwaukee checked all the boxes, and it was like, oh, so does Mama Tried, Scott Moore. So it was a no-brainer. So that's why we're here. And that's what brought us here. And then, very lucky to be working with Harley. Checked all the boxes. And so what we're here to do right now is push this so when the show happens, we can say, hey, guys, this is where you can get it. This is who we're working with. This is our brand. This is our people. It's really important.
Yeah, smart. Yeah. Tying it all together.
Yeah. And, it's the launch for this kind of thing is not get it everywhere and everybody can buy it all the time. I mean, that's, big companies do that and they can do that fine. That's them. We're building this up from an authentic point, right? So we're around the shop. And we're at places that we like to go around the shop. We're not everywhere in Connecticut. Right. We probably never will be
everywhere.
Yeah, right. So we're doing surgical strikes, and Milwaukee is a key one. We've got some connective tissue down in Texas as well. Hand built is one of those anchor points, and there's a bunch of other stuff down there. We've got the Riverside Anaheim kind of thing with Born Free, and we'll do some surgical strikes there. But the point is, where the culture is where we want to be. Right.
It's our people, man.
That's our people, right? And
hot
so
rod, cars, whiskey, cool dudes, man.
Right.
And girls.
Gotcha.
That's it. Yeah, and girls.
Sorry about that.
And can you we haven't talked about whiskey yet. We keep backing up. You guys keep talking. I'll
You had a whiskey question.
Oh, he's going to skip ahead.
No, I just was wondering like what you don't have to give up the whole thing, but like what is there a business model where like a small scale whiskey it works, like you can make a living off of it. You can make a few bucks. You don't have to be Jack Daniels. You don't have to be
100%.
Four Roses.
This is the cool thing about this. So like I said, I've been in this business a while, right? And you need a big business for a big company to be interested in it, but you don't need a big business to make a living for a bunch of people that are doing it, right? So there's a lot of small brands out there that are doing this. Some of eventually have sold to big companies and things like that. But there's a lot of them that are just, it's a lifestyle. They're providing a livelihood for their family and for their network and maybe 20 or 30 people and
having pride in what they're doing and what they're making and enjoying
sticking to what they subscribe to, right? They're being Josh, right?
Cool.
So how do you do Josh in the whiskey world? A lot of people doing it already,
Hire
man.
Randy.
Yeah, hire Randy. Yeah, that's why we're good partners, I guess, right?
That's awesome.
So, yeah, there's room there, and we don't
Right.
need to be huge in order to be successful.
all right, cool.
Financially successful, right? But we do need to be smart about how we do it,
Right.
and not try to be all things to all people at all
Yes.
times. And we don't care about that, right? We want to do what we're doing in our way that we can bring people to the party with. That's it. That's pretty much it. And the party needs to be big enough that we're not just feeding ourselves, right?
Right.
We can't go to the shop and have whiskey up top and call it a day, right? We
Right.
gotta
Yeah,
invite
can't get
more
high on
people
your
to
own
it.
supply.
I mean, we're talking to two dudes that obviously get this. I mean,
Yeah.
Mama Tried feels like that. You guys feel like that. You understand that. And
Yeah.
I think that's why Mama Tried is so successful and is what it is and the feel is because you guys get exactly what we're talking about, which is why we're here and doing this and, happy to
Yeah.
be doing
Yeah.
it and being a part
Doing
of this
stuff
with
that
you
you,
guys.
yeah, doing stuff you love.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
from our perspective, and from mine. Been I'm the one that's like selling Mama Tried, right? Like behind the scenes, it takes money to do what we do, right? So whenever I get a potential partner or sponsor or anybody that, pardon my French, gives a fuck, it's really nice and refreshing and helpful and makes my job a lot easier because like you guys take the ball and run with it. And that just works good. It fits better.
But that's that relationship that
yeah,
works, right?
yeah, and it's I don't know, it's cool, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing how it flourishes in the future, and hopefully we can work together and be successful.
But I
Yep.
think that's the cool thing is having that open mind because if you guys were like, oh yeah, we'll do this with you, but it's got to be A, B, and C, we'd probably be like, we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about you guys. You're like, hey man, this is our vibe. Do you like it? Yeah. This is our vibe. Do you like it? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
And that is what builds to awesome things, dude. That's
Yeah, I don't like
how
rules.
Cool shit happens, right?
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about the nuts and bolts of whiskey.
Okay, so we're gonna start at a very, very high level. I'm gonna try to get down quickly to where we are. Okay.
The chainsaw.
Yeah, right. So whiskey is basically any spirit that's distilled using grain is the origin, right? So you can make alcohol out of anything that has a carbohydrate as long as your yeast wants to convert those sugars into alcohol, right? So that's the biological process, right? You can't really control that because it's a natural process. You can feed it, you can guide it, but you can't control it completely. So with whiskey, it has to go and cereal grains are things that grow on stalks basically. You got rice, and in the U.S. it's corn, rye, and barley are the three primaries. Some people are playing around with oatmeal. It's kind of cool, different taste. Some people are doing different varieties of corn in the U.S. In Scotland and Ireland, it's almost all barley, right? So it's got a very different kind of a starting taste profile. You mentioned Japan, right? So Japan is most often rice with a little malted barley. They've picked up some tricks from, since World War II that really built on some tremendous history. Some of the Japanese whiskeys are off the charts. I don't know if you've been experimenting in any of this stuff, but fantastic. And there's some that are very pedestrian, which is like every whiskey, right? But in the U.S., we have a specific kind of whiskey called bourbon. And bourbon has its own rules. It was the Bourbon Act of 1964 that Congress passed that gave us our own.
That's a United States thing. Bourbon.
That's a thing. Yeah, you can
Wow,
only
really?
make bourbon in the United States. So that's one of the rules. It has to be made
shit.
in the U.S.
Yeah.
Can be made anywhere in the U.S. Doesn't have to come from Kentucky. Has to be at least 51% corn in the mash bill. Has to be distilled at no more than 160 proof. So you can't just cook the stuff and make vodka out of it and call it whiskey. It's got to be under 160 proof. It has to go in the barrel at no more than 125 proof. So after you've distilled it, you bring it down to a certain level at most 125 with water, right? You put it back in the barrel to age, and it has to be aged in a new American oak barrel.
Why does this exist? Is it marketing?
A little bit. It's a little bit of, so think about this back in the 50s, right? So you had the Scotch Whisky Association. To be called Scotch, it's got to be made in Scotland. You had the
Got it.
Irish Whisky Association. It's got to be
Yeah.
made in Ireland, right? So the United States didn't have any such thing.
Yeah.
So the people making bourbon said, let's get some definition of this. And they've been working on this for 130 years or
Yeah.
so. And so when they finally got to an agreement of what that would look like, the true American spirit was bourbon, and that was the definition.
So let me just
Like
clarify.
champagne or tequila, all those things.
Exactly.
But
Tequila's got to
specific.
come from a certain
Yeah.
region of Mexico exclusively. Only same thing with champagne.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Cognac.
so is American metal bourbon?
Haha, that's a good question. Excellent question. It is technically a bourbon. The product in the bottle is technically a bourbon because that's a taste profile that we all love, right? We don't call it bourbon for 2 reasons. One, we have other products in the line. We have a 10-year that does not qualify as a bourbon. It's a beautiful whiskey, but it's not bourbon, right? Second is the brand and the approach to the brand. People like Jack Daniels. Is it a bourbon?
I don't think so. No.
It's a whiskey, right? It meets all the criteria for bourbon. They don't call it bourbon. It's whiskey, right? Could be.
Right.
People understand whiskey is a dark spirit that comes in a bottle. People don't understand bourbon yet.
Sure.
En masse, right?
Sure.
They just don't get it, right? So think of it this way: all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon,
Yeah.
right? So just because it's called bourbon, people think of it as a smaller subset of things. We don't want to be confined by that subset.
All right.
So but that drinks like that. Well, we'll taste it. And you can tell
let's
me
do
what
it
it drinks
now.
like,
Let's
right?
do it right now. Open this up with it's like the bright light
That's not
from
my job. This is for
No,
the
it's the
guys.
bright light from
But once again,
Pulp Fiction.
Oh,
this gentleman and what he's saying right now, right how? Do you hear that little? But unbelievable on his knowledge, the depth of him, what he can do, how he can do this, and you have to have that to be able to create something like this and make it successful. And so,
Yeah.
wow.
you know, it's awesome having him on the team because, I mean, you want to get into the weeds in it. This guy, for me, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I was always a whiskey or bourbon drinker, but you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes and
Some
goes and
education
goes.
goes a long way.
Super, dude. I mean, and this guy can go deep on it. So for us, it was awesome to have him, you know, to be a part of this team because you got to know what you're doing, man, when you get into this world.
You gotta turn
can't
it-
just wing this shit.
You got to turn
No.
it upside down and hit the back. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Josh, did you make that case?
No, actually, Ralph Baldwin in the shop did.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, no, very cool.
You could throw that thing out of an airplane and it would land and the bottle would not break. So it's good. Yeah.
This is a box from probably the 1920s or so, right?
That's awesome.
So once again, Connecticut swap meets, you can find the wildest, cool stuff. So Ralph will go out to these swap meets, find these beautiful boxes, and then make activations out.
Yeah,
this.
that's
And
cool.
So, yeah, and for us, how you present, how you show up is everything.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a beautiful bottle too.
Yeah.
Well, show me how to pour a whiskey.
Well, this is one of the cool things. When we were searching for a bottle, you know, you can do a standard old whiskey, you know, or a vodka style bottle or a square bottle because a lot of people do that, right? We didn't do that. We did it for a couple of reasons. We wanted a different kind of a more substantial, right? Because this bottle empty is heavy.
Yeah.
This is a substantial.
You could tell
bottle.
it's got some heft to it.
We also
When you're in a
wanted.
street fight, it can become it's great.
We also wanted something that you could kind of pour easy. It's got a nice grip on it as well. And then the label itself, I don't know if you guys felt this, but it's
Embossed.
Embossed,
it's
yeah,
embossed
super
and
Put a
nice.
ridiculous amount of time and thought into these labels. Was it easy?
It was easier to agree on the juice than it was to agree on some of the design elements here. But there, you know, the filigree is in here, and let me just talk about that real quick. So there's, you know, it's thoughtful, right? So there's some design elements. There's a knuckle down there, right? I don't have my glasses on. We got the 34 part of the grill over here. You asked about what makes a 34. One of the distinctive things in my brain, 32 and 34, are these grills. 32 is a little bit different,
How you
right?
separate it.
Yeah, right. So that's actually a build that Josh did years ago. That's a fucking awesome car. And then we've got some, you know, pistons and that kind of stuff on the back as well. But the point of it is, it's tied to the shop, right? It's tied to the details and the reality of the shop. And that knuckle, that actually is, yeah, that's off the
The Disciple.
Disciple,
Yeah,
right?
it's the
Which
41.
when we were starting the whiskey, that was the build that Josh was working on at the time. So all this stuff is tied together. We've got some other cool stuff that's coming up with that as well.
Nice.
And then we've got a little, you know, like engraved on the top and that kind of stuff. So how do you pour a whiskey, right?
No,
Tall,
I'm being serious.
right?
I know that there's a.
You tip it, and it goes in there.
Well, if you
That's
are
it.
if you were into to wine, you're a sommelier.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're into coffee, you're a what? You're a coffee buyer.
drinker?
No, if you're like a coffee buyer, there's a word for that.
There is a word
Yeah,
for
there
it.
You know the
I
beans and
Yeah.
and I'm sure if you know chocolate, you're a what?
Chocolatier.
A chocolatier.
Yeah.
And so if you're a whiskey, there's the air intake to this is going to change the flavor. And so the pour, the glass I'm drinking it in, whether it's with ice or water, all
Yep.
is going to change the profiles,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I want to. That sounded like I knew what I was talking about, and that's the end of what I was talking
I
about.
can tell that you
But
do.
my point is, I want you to go. I'm going to taste this now, and I want you to.
Smells good.
I mean, how can we best do
Okay,
this?
so
How
we're gonna
can
do a couple.
nose.
We're gonna do a
Gotta
couple
get the
things,
nose.
right? So we're gonna get. Can you hold that for a second?
Yeah, I love the hand thing. I'm double marked.
So we're gonna start. I mean, yeah, the nose is great. Start with the nose. Just kind of get a little bit of a sniff on it, and you're gonna get. I'm gonna guide you through it a little bit.
Okay.
I get a lot of cereal sweetness, right? It's primarily corn. There's a kind of a vanilla, a little bit of almost
Yes, yes.
like a light caramel kind of a nose to it, and then you get at the back you get this kind of residual. I mean, it's alcohol, but it's not.
Like heat.
It's warmth. You know, it's not heat as much as it's warmth. So I'm not expecting on the nose. I'm not expecting this thing to scorch me, right? I'm not expecting that. Not on the nose. All right, so we're gonna do something a little bit different here. We're gonna put a little drop in the palm of your hand. Okay, just a little bit. It's gonna be tough with the microphones, but I put a lot of it. But okay, and then I'm gonna walk you through what we're gonna do before we do it. We're gonna rub our hands together. We're going to take a smell. Once it starts to evaporate out, the first smell, and then we're going to do it again. We're going to take a second smell. We're going to do it again and take a third smell. Okay?
Everybody's gonna rub their hands together.
Yeah, that's right. Then we all hold hands. So let it evaporate before you start the smell, right? And so you're going to feel it coming off right about now for me. So you get the cereal on the first smell. I get corn. It's heavy on the corn at first. I get rye. The barley's coming through.
I smell it.
On the second smell, you start to pick up the wood notes, right? You're getting some of the
Or if you haven't washed your hands, a lot of
Yeah,
weird
right.
notes.
Gasoline.
The second smell, you're going to get the elements that come from the wood, the esters and the phenols, the polyphenols and things like that out of the wood, right? That's going to be more the vanillas and those darker caramels and things like that.
So
Yeah.
those vanillas are just coming from the char.
Well, everything evaporates at a different temperature, right? So yeah, that's thanks. So the first thing that evaporates off are the lower temperature elements, the lower temperature fusel oils and things like that, right? So when you're getting that cereal that comes off, that's what comes off first. When you're getting that second smell from the wood, the heavier molecules, they come off at a slightly warmer temperature. So after the alcohol's evaporated out, and the last thing that you get at the very end, that's going to give you an expectation of what you're going to get on the warmth of the burn, right?
Gotcha.
So if you've got a not so great distillation, you're gonna know it when you
Your
do
eyes are
this.
gonna water.
Yeah, well, you're gonna go, wow, that's alcohol, and it's
Yeah.
gonna feel like rubbing alcohol in your nose.
Oh,
There's
wow.
none of that in this.
Yeah, it gets really sweet
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah,
or
you still get that.
something.
You get that sweetness again coming
yeah,
back,
it's
right?
like it's like a it's like a cologne, like a good scent that you
It's a
want to
carrier.
like. You
It's
want
just
to
a
have
carrier
something. You
element.
want to smell it all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, yeah. All right, so
Nice.
I really appreciate that.
that's the
Yeah.
smell, right? And so that gives you a breakdown of what's going to be in there, right? So now we're going to taste it, right? You've done a little bit of a nose on it.
Cheers, boys.
All right.
Thanks
Cheers.
for coming.
Yeah.
Microphone, Jeremy.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for coming. No, hang on. I'm going to do this all at once, or I'm going to sip it. Like, there's got to be a way to drink this.
Well, I personally, I'll take about a half of a sip out of it, let it roll on the tongue a little bit, just because I want to feel that mouthfeel. I want to see what the consistency is out of it a little bit. I want to see if I'm going to get that. Some people call it the Kentucky hug, that kind of,
Yeah.
you know. I don't like that a lot. You can feel it in your mouth. It tends to kind of get to the back of your tongue a little bit when it's in your tongue. And but I know this one, so I'm going to just go ahead and drink it.
Objectively, that's really good. That was really, really good.
Yeah, smooth.
I need a little more for some adjectives.
Well, we happen to have a little more, and this bottle's got to be gone in the next 10 minutes, right? So
Shit.
Here's another.
That would be a
Here's
fun
sheer
episode,
panic.
actually. Just get shit-faced drunk in,
Yeah,
in
by the end of the
5 to 10
podcast.
minutes. Yeah.
we should have started there.
Listen, another thing too that I, ask from you guys is, we're obviously not bullshit guys. I love feedback. Like, if you don't like it, tell us.
Tell us.
No.
Yeah.
If there's something off, tell us, because to me it's interesting. We always talked about, we like it, but we're pretty close to it, right? But it's awesome when people are like, I'm like, I appreciate that feedback too.
I'm learning. I want to really be a consumer,
Yeah.
a appreciator. What's the word I'm looking for? I want to really
Connoisseur.
Connoisseur. I really want to learn to appreciate whiskey. I told you that I'm in these whiskey of the month clubs or whatever.
Yeah.
but I just never really. It comes with notes, and I just don't know what to write.
Yeah.
This little lesson you just gave me, and the way that I'm tasting whiskey, I'm tasting it for the first time. So for you to ask me, is this good or bad? I don't know. It's like I need to taste every whiskey I've ever had again.
I'm in the same boat. I don't feel
what
like
I mean?
I'm qualified to say if it's good
listen,
or bad.
this is-
But you can enjoy what you like.
it or not.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's...
Yeah, well, not
So
yet.
this is a like the huge gap between like the sommelier, right? The wine has rules and wine has structure, and the judgment of wine is very, it's ancient and disciplined and practiced and studied and taught, and you become a master through years of tasting and picking up notes and reporting back and all that stuff. We don't look at our whiskey that way. I mean, there's people that do that and they do a great job of it. That's not us. I mean, what we're approaching this as is we love it. If you want to go down that path and go to like around here, something simple, Total Wine has classes on this kind of stuff, right? And they'll do a whole flight and they'll give you tastings and that kind of stuff. There's a couple of people online too that have tasting notes and.
You'd rather build a chopper than a fucking AMCA points bike,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
100%.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
So we want people to ride this. That's the.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is our version. This is
Yeah.
like rideable art. That's what Josh
Yeah.
builds. That's what we're doing. This is drinkable art. And
Yeah.
that's full stop.
And I have to change the way. I guess just the way I changed the way I ride a motorcycle, understanding custom culture. I have to change the way I drink. Drinking to me was purely a social. It was purely the taste and the flavor of the beer was interrupting my conversation. You know what I mean, or adding to the conversation. It wasn't the focal point of the drink. This little lesson you just gave me, I really appreciate this. And so I want to just go back to you saying, if we don't like it, is it good? I think this is fantastic.
Back to your comment, though, what we want, though, is, yes, we want you to enjoy it, but it needs to be that camaraderie. We want this in the table with the boys.
Sure.
We are just sipping and having fun and not trying to be like, this is what you just said. It should be shared. It should be fun. It should be like just having relaxed times with it.
Yeah.
Should feel
Yeah.
comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about. Now, by the way, I really appreciate this, and I do taste vanilla and caramel, absolutely, and corn. Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
almost like
corn, right?
a little.
Well, this is one of the things
Corn
that we
on the
do.
cob.
So we're getting in. I'm going to go a little bit down your rabbit hole, okay? Right. So when you age a spirit in an environment like Scotland, right, your temperature and humidity doesn't really fluctuate that much, and it takes fucking forever to pick up those wood notes. And they're using used bourbon barrels for most of it, right? So you got a used bourbon barrel that doesn't have a ton of those notes in it, so you just got to let it sit. And you can get a 15, 18-year-old Scotch, and it tastes pretty good because it's had 15 or 18 years to do its thing in this kind of an environment. And I'm doing this little wave thing because
You're showing
show the
extremities.
variations. You go to Tennessee, and you're going hot as fuck, right? And you're getting cool, hot, humid, and it just gets abused quickly. So we move it out of Tennessee after a couple of years, right? And we move it up to Vermont where it's cold and it's dry, and it gets deep penetration to that wood very quickly.
Interesting.
So that
Cold
makes
and
up a lot of-
dry is you want it to get beat up because it extrapolates the process, gets your product faster, and then you slow it down.
It gets beat up, and
Into
yes,
wood.
that's pretty much that's
then you
kind
wanna-
of it.
but
But
then
there's
you
another
wanna
factor that goes
subtleize
in.
the-
Well, we're going with in Vermont. The curves are
Yeah.
pretty extreme, right? It doesn't get as hot, but it gets fucking cold, and the humidity goes to equivalent of zero, right?
Right.
Because when you're below zero, the humidity at 20% is effectively zero at 50%, right? There's no humidity in the air. So what happens is
But
stuff
you're
wants
letting
to.
it's not, you're not in a controlled environment. You're just letting
Yeah,
whatever's
it's the
outside is
atmosphere.
doing it.
Yep, that's it.
Oh, okay.
So it sucks so deep into that wood, and then it comes back out of that wood, right? And it pulls out those deep notes.
Yeah.
Well, why don't the Tennessee bourbon makers get a giant warehouse and just turn the cold on?
Well, so that's funny you asked. So Maker's Mark is doing this limited release, and they basically took their 7-year whiskey and they put barrels into a limestone cave, and they put it on pause for 3-4 more years. I think they're calling it a 10-year, 11-year, something like that, right? So with that 4 years in the limestone cave, there's no change in. It's a refrigerator, right? So it just sits there at 58 degrees for another 4 years. So it just basically stops aging, and it's humid. So you're not getting a whole lot more movement, in my opinion. I haven't tasted the product yet, but just objectively looking at it, they're not doing the same thing that we are.
Just marketing.
Sure, but what
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's probably different than their. I'm sure it's different than their 7.
Yeah.
But I don't know how different it is because I just haven't tasted it, or what their
Or
10
it's
would
just
be
different.
like.
I just want to
that's-
zoom in that why I appreciate the authenticity that whiskey makers have to actually moving the product as opposed to just letting it sit in a warehouse and changing the temperature, right?
Yeah.
Because could they not just do
They
that?
could do it, yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but apparently that's not what whiskey.
Well, you guys are gonna get a little bit of variance too, aren't you? I mean, you
Always.
have.
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, every
Well, there's a
barrel's
variance in
going to be
every barrel,
different, right?
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
every barrel's
every
a little
one,
bit
right?
different.
Tenure, if you want to speak into that, I won't go, but that's a classic example of that.
Yeah. So we have a 10-year that we sourced. Again, I had a bunch of samples from different suppliers. They come to me all the time, right? So I tasted this 10-year. I'm like, God, that tastes a whole lot like this as a starting point, which is really weird because that's not a 10-year whiskey, right? So I tasted it out with the boys. We said, hey, that's pretty damn good stuff. Let's get it in. So we bought 17 barrels of this. We moved it to Vermont. The first barrel we bottled was great. The second bottle was actually better. The third one, which was about 9 months in Vermont, is fucking off the charts.
My favorite.
And we've got more coming on the back end of it. But it's because
They're
it
all
has that
different.
experience in the
They're all
wood,
gonna
right?
be different.
And they're all going to be a little bit different. And so
Nice.
they're all single barrels, and we may have to do some double barreling on a couple of the other ones that are on the end of that. But the point, to answer your question, each barrel is going to be a little bit different too, right? The grain is going to be cut a little bit different. You're going to get some different penetration out of it. Occasionally we'll get something that's, I call it kind of a yellow or almost a green wood. You've seen, lumber, like when you're on a construction project and you get
It's
that kind
not
of smell that comes
consistent,
off. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that variation in there. We're very careful about selecting the juice that goes in the bottle that doesn't have that. If we have to blend, we will. So if we blend up to 4 barrels to get a result that is this product, we'll do that. We had one that we had to supplement with a little bit of rye just because the mid palate wasn't enough. There wasn't enough pepper in there. So we wanted more of that white pepper taste that you got kind of in the mid taste. So we put a little bit of rye back in it, but only a couple percent to raise it back up. And it worked out beautifully. So that's the art of the blending and the craftsmanship that goes into the selection and the actual barreling and the bottling so that we end up with this as consistently as we possibly can.
I love it.
Does that make sense?
Char.
Yeah.
I feel
We're
like
gonna
that
chart
makes
white
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is number
Absolutely.
3 char. So there's
You-
4
you
levels of
explained
char.
You explained this really well. I appreciate your
He's the
teaching,
custom-
your ability to teach.
Freaking crazy dude of whiskey, man. I don't know how
Yeah.
to explain him. It's like, you
Answer
got a
me-
custom builder that was the top. It's like he's out of the whiskey, dude. Yeah.
Let me go from more of a layman's terms. I appreciate the high-end discussion that we're having. On a back end, why I don't drink or why I don't chug this bottle is there's hangovers. And to me, that's actually why the products that I pick are tested with a hangover variant. Right?
Fair. Yeah, fair.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's
It's true. It's
Like,
true.
oh man, I don't.
Hangovers are gonna kill me, dude. Yeah.
I don't drink that because that gives me a hangover, right?
Yeah.
Is there truth to this, or is this a wives' tale, so to speak?
That's a really great question.
Okay.
I'm not going to go down the science or doctor path on any of this stuff, but what I will say is that objectively, when you distill products, you're separating out ethanol, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what distilling is. It's separating out ethanol from all the other chemicals that are in a distillation. There are things like acetone that come out of the distillation process. So when you're fermenting, there's acetone in that mix, right? So you want to separate that stuff out. So when the distiller is making their cuts, they need to separate out that bad shit so that it doesn't carry over into what's in the bottle. Not all operations cut it as fine. So there are some products that have things like acetone in
when they
them.
say
Not
you
good
know?
to hangovers, so we don't kill ourselves.
You're poisoning your
Less
body
acetone,
more with
less frozen pizza.
Yeah,
on the
I mean,
couch the next day.
and listen, no distiller is deliberately putting acetone
Sure.
in their product. I'm not suggesting that. But when you do your cuts, you have to be really careful, and you got to be very precise in what
There's
temperatures you're pulling
the
off.
cheaper
and
the
all that
whiskey, the
stuff.
more liberal the cut.
Generally.
But
yeah.
but when someone says it's 7 times distilled, isn't it cut?
Well, you
7
can't
times or-
distill whiskey 7 times, right? Because you lose all the grains. That's a vodka thing, right?
Right,
So
okay.
when you're making vodka, you're trying to get everything, all the taste out. Not quite exactly, but that's kind of what the goal is with vodka, is get to 192 proof out of the still and things like that. With whiskey, you can't. I mean, I guess you could go to 190, but that's a light whiskey, and you're taking almost all the character of the grain out by the time you do that, because none of those molecules are coming over with it. With a bourbon-style whiskey, you're doing it at a much lower proof, so 160 proof, that's 80% alcohol. That means there's 20% of those flavonoids that come over with this.
Okay. Got
right?
flavonoids. Got it.
Flavonoids, yeah.
This guy's starting
Get
to
it.
drop off and all this.
Flavonoids.
Can I have just a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yeah, damn right.
Just a
you
little
can.
bit more of that. Thank
And
you.
there's no little on
All
the
right.
second.
Whoa,
So
all
second,
right.
second's
Okay.
good pours.
All right,
That's how it
all
works.
right, all right.
So anyway, always choose quality spirits. You want to avoid a hangover. That's the
Okay,
starting point.
so here's my one final question, and our producer here is we got to wrap it up here. We're coming to an hour.
Yeah, we're at an hour and 50.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So
we
I
still have
had
3
heard
hours left.
Someone, someone in
Getting into it, boys.
someone in the industry had told me this, and it stuck with me. They said that American corn alcohol, Everclear, is so cheap and easy to produce that it is the foundation of globally every alcohol. That this person told me that Jameson, for example, is American spirits in its core, and that
That's you. This person may not have given you the full picture of those things. American corn alcohol is the biggest, most broadly consumed. Tito's is American corn alcohol, right? It's all whiskey in the United States is virtually based on corn. Not 100% of it. There's a lot of rye whiskeys out there, but from a volume standpoint, corn is the biggest.
You can make vodka with corn?
Oh yeah, you can make vodka out of anything. So we make in Vermont, we make vodka out of maple.
Wow.
Yeah.
We use maple
Wild,
sap,
right?
Really?
right? Because all you need is a yeast that will ferment with your sugar that creates alcohol.
But
right?
so
So you got to
what-
get the
Just
right
the
yeast and the
process.
right
Vodka
environment.
is a process.
But
Yeah.
I thought vodka was like the flavor that was like the unflavored flavor, right?
Yeah, that's
Like-
recently changed. So
Yeah.
it used the gold standard of vodka was odorless, colorless, tasteless,
Right.
right? And that was kind of the thing from 1800s with Smirnoff
Yeah.
starting that.
It's
With
part of the
Potatoes
Russians
or
somewhere.
grain or like
Yeah, and potatoes is kind of a very, very small piece of the vodka category. Most vodka is actually wheat. So Kettle One,
Okay.
Smirnoff, Tanqueray Sterling, those are mostly wheat. Tito's is corn. But your question about is corn the base? Jameson's, for example, is barley,
okay.
right? And Irish whiskey, they have a different distillation process than the Scotch do. In Scotland, they do a one-time distilled. In Ireland, they do a twice distilled.
So my friend's full of shit.
Well, I don't know your friend, so I couldn't really say that. But
It's okay. To be
I know you-
honest.
It's okay.
Yeah, well, you know
Wait,
my
I know
friend.
your friend.
is your
I
friend
know we're
named
full-
name Warren?
Yeah. This is a Warren question he wanted me to ask you.
I'm full of shit on a lot of things, but that one
I
wasn't.
want to
wouldn't
begin.
come out of your
I want to
mouth.
begin to summarize here. We got to begin to summarize, if that's okay. So thanks, Josh, for sharing your reality TV experience.
And once again,
you're,
thank you
you're very
guys for-
articulate
No, it's really fun
gentleman.
hanging out with you guys.
Randy, I really appreciate your high-level explanation of whiskey.
Oh, this is fun.
And we could go another 4 hours with this, but I don't want to.
Easy. We covered some ground before we even turned the mics on over there by the bar. We don't need to go back and summarize that conversation, but that was really great.
But that was
Talking
awesome,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No, you guys are really
we
fun.
were like, time out. We got to just save it for the.
Yeah.
Because the magic, the magic is always before the mics come on. But like, we should just like walk in, just like mic'd up, and just like.
Well, I
we
think
keep
here's where
talking
the
about
magic
that.
is, and doing a lot of this and experiencing, other people to a certain degree. It's not always easy just to flow and talk like this, right? You got to feel comfortable. You gotta have people that are on the same page. You got to have that really relaxing, cool flow moment. And you guys have been like, yeah, we could just sit here and drink all night.
Yeah,
with you guys.
exactly.
Because you open us up in a good way, and I think that's a big takeaway.
Yeah.
We could do this podcast, and it could be like.
We've had them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been really fun hanging out with you guys, man.
Awesome. Well, and also you guys are. There's a snowstorm. There's a blizzard outside. It's
still snowing all damn day.
It's slowed down just a little bit, but since you guys are from Connecticut, you know this. When there's a snowstorm happening, cops being able to figure out drunk driving is pretty limited. It's
Yeah, a little harder.
Yeah, exactly.
perfect. We
Yeah,
can just
you're
bounce off cars all the way
sliding,
to
you're
the
bouncing
hotel.
off of guardrails. That's just part of getting
It's like
home.
bumper rails
Yeah,
in
yeah,
bowling,
exactly.
right?
So
All
yeah,
right to the
so maybe we
hotel.
could stay here a little bit
He's
longer
driving,
after
so
this.
it's
Yeah.
Well, I want to summarize here. I want to bring
It's
this
a
full
rental.
circle. I try to find something to bring this to an end and bring it full circle. And here's my full circle minute or word.
Give it to us.
Acetone is great for cheating your tires for Flat Out Friday. True story.
Maybe there's an
I can
American
supply you with
maybe
some.
there's American metal byproduct.
If you put acetone on your tires for Flat Out Friday, it makes them stick. Makes them get
Dope.
you know what I'm talking about?
it'll
It's doping
soften
your
rubber up,
tires.
yeah.
Is that against the rules?
No, I'm encouraging people to dope their tires at Flat Out Friday.
And take
Really?
a shot of this before they
I'm
race.
pro
It's
pro
perfect,
do-
yeah.
Pro dope.
pro bro dope. right. Well, we always end up with a clap. We're clapping here for American Metal.
All right.
We're
Thanks,
clapping
guys.
American. Thanks
Yeah.
for coming, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Let's end it with the cheers, boys.
Yeah,
All right,
Lord,
yeah.
you gotta
Yep.
put some more in there.
Oh, that we can do.
Oh, careful. You guys ever met Party Warren?
Yeah,
boy.
my party room. Yeah.
We're about to.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
Cheers, boys. Cheers. Thank.